Just sign the house over to us." Those were my fiancé's words, right after I'd returned from a combat zone to find he'd built a new life with my best friend, right inside the house I had inherited. The two people I'd entrusted to protect my future were the very ones who stole it. They didn't just steal my love. They tried to erase my past by demanding I surrender my family's symbol of honor. They thought a wounded soldier was a weak one. What did they miscalculate? I'm Captain Anya Sharma, a logistics officer in the U.S. Army, stationed at Fort Bragg. My job revolves around plans, numbers, and supply chains not as glamorous as the infantry, but it's the lifeblood of every operation. I'm used to discipline, used to keeping things under control. The military runs in my family's blood for generations, and I live by the rules they pass down: discipline, honor, duty. My grandfather, a retired colonel, left me his sturdy two-story house just outside of Fort Bragg, with its wide porch and an old oak tree he'd planted as a young lieutenant. To me, it wasn't just property, it was a symbol of my family's honor, the place I thought I would build my future, and that future seemed to be mapped out, as clear and certain as a battle plan. The perfect piece in that plan was my fiancé, Major Liam Carter, an infantry officer, respected on base, with a confident smile and a career on the fast track. We were a power couple, the kind people admired. He was the man I would build a home with in my grandfather's house. And of course, there was Chloe Davis, my childhood best friend. If Liam was the man I chose to love, Chloe was the family I chose. She knew all my secrets, wiped my tears, and was the first person I called when Liam proposed. She was the one holding the wedding planner, helping me decide everything from flower colors to the menu while I was busy on base. My life was perfectly arranged. Then the deployment orders came. The Middle East. 9 months. It wasn't a surprise, it's part of the life. Mission first. I accepted it without hesitation. 9 months is a long time, enough to change many things, but I believe the most important things were immune. The evening before I left, the three of us stood on the porch. The North Carolina night air smelled of pine. I handed Liam the key. It wasn't just a key, it was the key to my future. "Take care of it," I said, my voice steady. "And take care of each other." Liam hugged me. "Don't worry, Anya. Everything will be right here when you get back. I promise." Chloe hugged me too, tightly. "We'll keep planning the wedding. You just focus on your mission and come home safe." I believed them, completely. I left with absolute faith. Faith in my mission, in my fiancé, and in my best friend. I gambled it all on them, and then I deployed. In the Middle East, my world shrank to the desert heat, the hum of drones, and the thick smell of diesel. Every day was a series of logical decisions: where cargo needed to go, when, and how to make sure no one died because a crate of ammo or a medical kit arrived too late. I kept myself busy. A late shipment could leave an outpost out of ammo. A miscalculation could mean a soldier wouldn't get plasma in time. There was no room to think about the void I'd left behind. I still called Liam when I could. He was enthusiastic at first, but the conversations grew shorter, more distant. Pop-up training exercise, he'd say. Bad connection. The damn time difference. As an officer, I understood communication blackouts. I accepted it as part of the reality. I was busy. So was he. Chloe was different. She was my main source of information, a constant stream of long texts and photo updates. Dropped by the house to clean up for you today, followed by a picture of a spotless living room. Liam came over for dinner. He's getting too thin. I had to fatten him up, followed by a photo of a hearty meal. The pictures looked normal at first glance, but I noticed things. A new table lamp in the study I'd never seen. A different brand of coffee on the kitchen counter. A gray fleece blanket draped over the sofa. I hate fleece. My logical mind dismissed it. Liam must have bought it. Chloe must have brought it over. I must have forgotten. I was too busy keeping my soldiers alive to worry about a blanket. I chose to trust. Then one day, that choice was taken from me. A convoy escort. An IED. Shrapnel in my leg. Not life-threatening, but enough for medical to send me stateside ahead of schedule. Lying on a stretcher, I thought of my commander's disappointment, of the teammates who'd have to pick up my workload. But another thought mingled with it, a chance to go home early, to see Liam, to see Chloe, and to give them a surprise. On the C-130 back to the States, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell them. I wanted to see Liam's face when I walked through that door, 3 months early. I wanted to hug Chloe and thank her. That would be my reward for 9 months of service. The taxi left the airport and headed toward the house. The North Carolina sky was deceptively calm. My heart beat faster, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. I was home, 3 months early, and I was about to create a big surprise, just not the way I had imagined. The taxi stopped at the end of the oak-lined street. I pulled my duffel bag from the trunk myself, feeling a sharp twinge in my leg. It was fine. I'd been through worse. As the house came into view, the first thing I saw were the 2 cars. Liam's truck was parked neatly in the driveway. Next to it was Chloe's little sedan. A strange feeling pricked at me, but I pushed it away. She must be over helping Liam clean the place. I used the spare key I always kept in my pocket. The door opened without a sound. And then my world collapsed. This wasn't the house I had left. It was another version, a parallel reality. The landscape painting my grandfather loved had been replaced by a piece of modern, abstract art. My navy blue curtains were gone, swapped for flimsy white shears. My old leather armchair had been replaced by a love seat. The air smelled different, as if I were a stranger in my own home. And then I heard them. A soft giggle from the living room. I walked toward the sound, my legs feeling like they didn't belong to me. They were on the new love seat. Chloe was wearing one of Liam's oversized sweaters, her legs curled up under her. Liam's head was in her lap, his hand stroking her hair as they watched something on a laptop. They didn't look like 2 friends leaning on each other. They looked like a married couple on a lazy Sunday afternoon. I stood there, still in my desert-dusted uniform from another world. Chloe's coffee mug on the table. Liam's shoes by the fireplace. The comfort. The familiarity. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a routine. Finally, Chloe looked up. Her eyes met mine. The smile vanished from her face. Panic replaced it. Then something worse. Annoyance at being caught. "Anya," she whispered. Liam sat up with a jolt. His face showed no remorse. Just shock, which quickly turned into a cold, defensive expression, as if my presence was an intrusion. "You're home early," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My voice was flat, ice cold. The training exercise ended early. Chloe started to cry, the fake tears I'd seen her use a dozen times. "Anya, it's not what you think. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, looking straight at Liam. "It seems pretty simple to me." Liam stood up, crossing his arms, the posture of a commanding officer dealing with an insubordinate soldier. "Look, Chloe and we developed feelings for each other. It happened. I wasn't going to lie to you. He wasn't going to lie. He just wasn't going to tell me." Chloe, meanwhile, was sobbing, clutching Liam's hand. "Anya, I didn't want this, but I couldn't fight my feelings for him." "In my house," I said. "We were taking care of it," Chloe sobbed. "I can see that," I replied, glancing around the alien room. "You've made it your own." I turned and walked out. The pain in my leg was nothing compared to the ache in my chest, but that pain didn't break me. It brought me into focus. I had left one war zone only to come home to another. But this time, I knew exactly who the enemy was. I didn't stay. That night, I got a cheap motel room near the base, an anonymous place with beige walls and the smell of disinfectant. I needed a neutral space, untainted by memory or betrayal. I slept a deep, dreamless sleep, the sleep of a soldier after a battle, when the body simply shuts down. The next morning, I reported back to my unit. My early return caused some paperwork shuffles, but no one asked too many questions. A combat injury was a sufficient reason. I began the process of recovery and reacclimating to life at Fort Bragg. I didn't contact Liam or Chloe. I let them deal with the truth. A few days later, Liam found me. He cornered me in the parking lot of the command building. "We need to talk, Anya." "I don't think we do," I said, not looking at him, and kept walking. He fell into step beside me. Look, I know you're angry, but we need to be practical. What Chloe and I have is real, and we've invested in that house. I stopped. Invested? Yeah, he said, in the tone of someone explaining a business deal. We bought new furniture, redid the landscaping. We made it a home. It means something to us now. I looked him in the eye, trying to find a trace of the man I used to love. There was nothing, just a stranger with an incredible sense of entitlement. It's my house, Liam. My family's. He sighed, a theatrical sound of frustration. I don't want this to get messy. Chloe and I talked it over, and we have a proposal. To avoid any ugly disputes, you just sign the house over to us. A clean break. You can start fresh somewhere else. The audacity of his offer almost made me laugh. He hadn't just betrayed me, he wanted me to finance his betrayal with my own legacy. No, I said, enunciating each letter. Absolutely not. That's when the war truly began. Liam wasted no time. He knew that in the military, reputation is everything, and he, with his higher rank and broader network, moved first. A new narrative began to circulate on base, a story skillfully crafted. It was said that Captain Sharma had come back from deployment with severe psychological trauma, that she had PTSD, was paranoid, and irrationally jealous. That Major Carter and her poor best friend Chloe had merely found comfort in each other while worrying about Anya and were now the victims of her instability. I started to feel it. The pitying looks in meetings, the whispers that stopped when I walked by. Colleagues who were once friendly now kept their distance. Even some of my subordinates looked at me with cautious eyes. Liam had turned me into an unexploded ordnance, and no one wanted to stand too close. He was using the rules of our world against me. He knew people would believe a simple story, especially from a respected officer. I was isolated, stripped of my fiancé, my best friend, my home, and now my honor. He had me surrounded on all fronts. But Liam forgot one thing. I'm a logistics officer. My job is to see through chaos, find the weak point in the enemy's supply line, and plan a methodical counterattack. And I had just found his weak point. Liam's weak point was his arrogance. He believed he had already won, that the narrative he'd built was an impenetrable fortress. He didn't anticipate that I wouldn't break or retreat. He had miscalculated his opponent. My opportunity came in the form of the annual brigade social, a mandatory event for all officers. It was a formal night, where officers wore their dress uniforms, brought their spouses or dates, and tried to make a good impression on the senior command. It was the perfect stage. I arrived alone. My dress uniform was sharply pressed, my medals polished. I walked into the ballroom with my head held high, ignoring the curious stares and hushed whispers. My legs still ached, but I hid it behind a steady stride. Liam and Chloe were already there. They stood in the middle of a group of officers, Chloe on Liam's arm, looking as if she owned the place. She wore a striking red dress, a bold and defiant choice. Liam, in his uniform, radiated the confidence of a man who believed he was in complete control. I didn't approach them. Instead, I made my rounds, greeting people I knew, speaking with Colonel Williams, the brigade commander, and his wife. I acted as if nothing was wrong. I was calm, professional. My composure seemed to unnerve them. Midway through the evening, Colonel Williams took the stage for a short speech. After he finished, he invited everyone to enjoy the rest of the night. That was my cue. I walked toward Liam and Chloe, who were now standing near the stage, accepting condolences for their difficult situation. "Major Carter," I said. My voice was loud enough for those nearby to hear, yet maintained its formal tone. Liam turned, a condescending smile on his face. "Captain Sharma, good to see you could make it." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. "I have a few things to clarify, and since the senior staff is here, this seems like the right time." A silence began to ripple out from our group. People started paying attention. "I hear a story has been circulating," I continued, looking directly at Liam. "A story about me returning from deployment psychologically unstable." Liam's face tightened. "Anya, this isn't the place. This is exactly the place," I cut him off. "Because honor is something we discuss in the open. That story is a lie, and I have the receipts." I took out my phone. I had prepared everything. "This is a text from Major Carter, sent to me 2 weeks before my deployment," I said, turning the screen toward Colonel Williams, who was standing nearby. He wrote, "Can't wait to marry you and start our life in that house. 9 months will fly by. Hardly the sign of a fractured relationship." I swiped to another file. "And these are my bank statements. On this date, a transfer for a new sofa. On this date, another for a dining set. Most of the new furniture that Major Carter and Miss Davis invested in my home was, in fact, purchased with my money, from a credit card I entrusted to my fiancé." The tension in the room was palpable. The smile was gone from Chloe's face. "And finally," I said, my voice like steel, "when I refused his amicable offer to sign over my family home to him, he began this campaign to destroy my reputation." I turned to Colonel Williams. "Colonel, an officer's conduct isn't just judged on the battlefield, but also by how he treats his fellow soldiers, especially one serving overseas. I'm simply asking for a fair investigation." I didn't need to say more. The scene was set. Liam stood there, pale and speechless. Chloe began to tremble. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't attacked. I had presented a report with data and evidence in the enemy's command center. And I knew, looking at the shocked and furious expression on Colonel Williams' face, that I had won. I didn't stay to watch the rest of the drama unfold. My mission was complete. I gave Colonel Williams a formal nod, turned, and walked out of the ballroom in near total silence. All eyes were on me, but now they were not looks of pity or suspicion. They were looks of astonishment and respect. The fallout was swift and decisive, as is the military way. The very next day, Colonel Williams summoned both Liam and me to his office. Chloe was not invited. As a civilian, she was outside his jurisdiction. The meeting was brief and cold. I systematically presented my evidence again. The texts, the bank statements, and a recording of the phone call where Liam told me to be practical and give up the house. I had recorded every conversation with him since my return. A logistics officer never goes into a negotiation without documentation. Liam tried to deny it, but his lies were weak and fell apart against the hard evidence. He looked pathetic, stripped of his major's bravado. Colonel Williams didn't say much. He just listened, his eyes like sharp scalpels dissecting every detail. When I finished, he turned to Liam. "Major Carter, are you familiar with Article 133 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Conduct Unbecoming an Officer and a Gentleman?" Liam didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. "You are temporarily relieved of your command duties," the colonel said. "There will be a formal investigation." It was a fatal blow. In the Army, being relieved of command is like having your soul ripped out. Liam's rising career came to a dead stop. The news spread like wildfire. The true story, in all its ugly detail, completely replaced his fabricated one. Now, he was the one receiving the looks of contempt. I had hired a civilian lawyer, a former JAG officer, to handle the house. With the evidence I had, the demand letter my lawyer sent was simple. Liam and Chloe were to remove all their personal belongings and vacate my property within 48 hours, or face eviction and a lawsuit for damages. They didn't fight it. Chloe disappeared from town almost immediately. I heard she went back to her hometown, having burned every bridge in the community she tried so hard to be a part of. Her relationship with Liam, built on betrayal, couldn't withstand the pressure of the truth. Liam couldn't go anywhere. He was stuck at Fort Bragg, awaiting the results of the investigation. Every day, he had to face the cold silence of his former peers. He had become a ghost in his own unit. 2 days later, I returned to my grandfather's house. Alone. Traces of them still lingered, the scent of Chloe's perfume, a few of Liam's magazines on a table. But they were gone. The house was mine again. I stood in the middle of the living room and took a deep breath. There was no feeling of triumphant victory, just a cold, empty space and a heavy task ahead. The task of rebuilding. Reclaiming the house was just the first step. Now, I had to make it my home again. I began with a methodical purge. Everything they had bought, everything they had touched had to go. That love seat? I had a charity service pick it up the first morning. The abstract art? I took it down and put my grandfather's favorite landscape painting back in its rightful place. For a full week, I worked relentlessly. I repainted the entire living room, choosing a deep forest green, a color of resilience and calm. I rehung the navy blue curtains I'd packed away. I threw out that gray fleece blanket as if it were toxic waste. Each action wasn't just cleaning, it was a ritual of reclamation. I was erasing their presence, square foot by square foot. The work kept my mind occupied. At the unit, I buried myself in complex logistical projects. I optimized a new supply route, saving the Army millions. I rewrote the inventory protocol, minimizing waste. My competence shone now that it wasn't clouded by personal drama. People started seeing me as just Captain Sharma, an excellent officer, not a character in some gossip story. My circle of friends rebuilt itself, but more cautiously this time. I wasn't looking for a replacement for Chloe. Instead, I opened up to other connections, ones built on mutual professional respect. Lieutenant Miller, a sharp young woman on my team, started joining me for morning runs. Sergeant Davis, a Signal NCO, shared my interest in military history books. Most significantly, I found an unexpected ally in Major Evelyn Reed, one of the few senior female officers in the brigade. She had watched the entire situation unfold. One afternoon, she called me into her office. "Sharma," she said, without preamble, "you handled that situation like a soldier. No emotion, just facts and strategy. I respect that." She became a mentor to me. She shared stories of the challenges she'd faced as a woman in a man's world. Through our conversations, I realized my strength wasn't just in enduring, but in standing up and reclaiming what was mine intelligently. One evening, while sorting through my grandfather's old books, I found a box of photos. Pictures of him, my grandmother, my mother as a child, all in this house. I realized the legacy he'd left me wasn't just wood and brick. It was resilience. I was ready to continue my family's story, on my own terms. The house was no longer a tainted place. It was a fortress again. My fortress. Time passed, and the North Carolina winter gave way to spring. My grandfather's old oak tree began to bud, and I felt a new sense of life budding within me as well. The results of the formal investigation were finally released. It wasn't loud or public, but in our closed world everyone knew. Liam Carter received a General Officer Memorandum of Reprimand, filed permanently in his official military record. It was an indelible black mark, a career killer. Shortly after, he received his transfer orders, not to a prestigious command, but to a desk job at some remote base in the Midwest. He was out of the game. He had lost everything: the career he'd built, the honor he'd worn like a cloak, and the house he'd tried to take. I never saw him again. One afternoon, checking my mail, I found an unstamped letter shoved into the box, Chloe's familiar handwriting. I almost threw it away, but opened it instead. The letter was short, the words scrawled and tear-stained. She was sorry. Not the kind of apology that asks for forgiveness, but the confession of someone who was lost. She said she had always been jealous of me, of my strength, my career, and Liam's love. When I left, she took her chance to have the life she thought she deserved. She was wrong, and now she was paying the price. She was working as a waitress in a small town, trying to start over. I read it, folded it, and put it in an old box. There was no forgiveness, but no more hatred either. Just closure. My own life moved forward. The injury in my leg had fully healed. My mentorship with Major Reed helped me navigate my career path. I enrolled in an advanced course for logistics strategy. A few months later, the promotion list was published. My name was on it. Captain Anya Sharma was to be promoted to Major. On the day I pinned on my new rank, I had a small party, not at a fancy restaurant, but on the porch of my grandfather's house. The only guests were a few close friends, Miller, Davis, and of course, Major Reed. We grilled burgers, drank beer, and talked about the future. As the sun set, painting the sky red, Major Reed raised her glass. To Major Sharma, "You didn't just earn this rank, you took it." Everyone raised their glasses. I looked around, at my real friends, at the sturdy house that sheltered us. I had been through a battle with no gunfire, a war for my own honor and legacy. I had lost a fiancé and a best friend. But I had found myself. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, I said. And this time, I knew I was in complete control of the plan.